All right, so one of the keys, obviously, is creating the fire people.
The
Ash people, fire and ash people. And in turn, what were the challenges of creating that world, to try to ground us in that world before the big battles happened?
Well, to be honest, it's an austere kind of environment, and it's very minimalistic in what you can do from a design standpoint. I think Dillon Cole and Deb Scott did an amazing job of realizing sort of when you look to our own references in clans that exist, but with very little clothing, people tend to adorn their bodies with both paint and scarification and piercing. So that's one of the things they leaned on, and that's ultimately where the design started. Obviously, Varong gets a little extra with her costuming, but because she's such a star. But we did, I think, honestly look at the whole clan as this very bleak but unique tribe that base themselves in something that's, I would say, truly unique on screen.
The Wind Trader sequence, obviously setting it up and paying it off with a fight, was great because there were so many different characters with different paint, different looks. What were the fun characters maybe in creating for that sequence?
See, Paylock was my favorite in that sequence, the leader of the Wind Traders. Okay. And David's face, just something about his face just came through so well, and he emoted so well on screen that he was just one of my favorite characters in the whole movie, actually.
Yeah, Richie loves to talk about this, but there are some characters that you have to fight to get the performance out of, and then there are some characters that just scream right through it when you get them out of the box, and David Toulis was one of those with Paylock. So,
I also love the final battle in the industrial complex. You got the vortex, but also the character. What were the challenges? Any favorite characters from that sequence?
Wow, I mean, it's very hard to say because honestly, Varung just stands out across the board. So it's hard to pick a character above her. So I think that she just was so strong this time, and it was interesting having to start from nothing with her where everybody else was sort of already created. So it was, I think she really stood out for me. But
especially the last moment with Zoe where she loses power. I thought that was very, you could see it in her eyes. Was that something where you had to kind of arc her because she was so strong throughout the whole film, but at the end she wasn't?
Zoe, she has such an emotional roller coaster in that film. And I think we see a lot more from her than we have maybe previously, which is really lovely to see it play off against Varung. She had that character to play against. And I think that made a really strong storyline for us to work with, which was amazing.
I have a few. What was your favorite, maybe quieter moment in the movie? Because it's so grand, but we like to sometimes ask questions about what was a character you kind of I like this moment, a little more quiet.
So, some of the simplest of coming out of the rivers, coming out of that up onto the stones just seemed like a good breath of air, it needed a break, and just to come out of the beautiful clean water onto the rocks and wash yourself, and well, that was a big part for me. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, so when you first read the script, and I assume under secrecy and penalty with the Secret Service,
yes.
What was your initial reaction to your character?
I initially kind of connected with her pain in a weird way because I had. Her anger and her wrath really comes from a place of being deeply disappointed in her world. And at the time, I could kind of connect with that because there was a lot of things that were happening that made me really mad about what was going on in the world. And ironically, through her, I learned how to make better peace with myself and the world.
Well, and what I love, the character, so that helped you as an actress, having such a grounded, emotional character, let you kind of play in the fantasy world a little because you have that grounded reality base?
Yeah, I mean, everything in the script, everything in any James Cameron script is absolutely thought through and makes total sense and is totally heart-centered. And I think that's the beauty of this film, is that as magnificent as the visual effects are, it really just is driven by the heart and the human condition. So yeah, it's grounded in that.
And obviously, the movie has a lot of special effects, but you're also interacting with actors. Is that something really important for you? It wasn't just the visual effect; you got to actually interact with co-stars and experience the emotionality of the character.
Yeah, I mean, interact with co-stars and not just co-stars, but real masters of their craft. And I think that Jim, as an actor's director, is just dream of dreams. And then everybody is incredibly skilled and really soulful and really supportive and really connected and very intentional and imaginative. And so there's not enough beautiful words that I can use to describe that experience. Yeah.
All right, so you finally see the film. What scene grabbed you emotionally? Like your performance. What did you see? Like, oh my God, I can't believe how this turned out. How beautiful it was, or something that really struck you.
Well, I think the moment that I'd kind of forgotten shooting, and then I saw it, and it really shocked me, was the moment when Quaritch and the whole sort of team come and arm the Ash. And it's that moment after where you're at scene and they come and they give all these weapons, and you see, and it really shocked me because it made it, for the first time, I was like, oh my God, that's happened over and over again in our world, and it's happening today, and it's, one of the great tragedies.
All right, so you read the script for the Wind Trader scene. You love it, wow, but what was the biggest initial fear, challenge, like how are we going to pull this one off?
The Wind Trader, going back to reading the script initially, it was on Avatar. One of the things that makes it really exciting is when you're introduced to new cultures and new tribes within the Na'vi. And with the Wind Trader culture as well, it was described in the ship as being a large gondola, which is towed by a Medusoid, but there was also the question of how do we add the detail to it and make it look like a Wind Trader owned, like what is it about the culture that contributes to this ship? And we're fortunate that we were given a really great handoff package by Dillon and beautiful artwork to work from, and then the lab had sort of done a great proxy model for us, and we had all that to work with, and then Sam and I from Weta were able to spend a lot of time with our crew working on all the detail and really bring it to life. And hopefully we like to think that it's a lot of the detail and the love and care that goes into it that gives it its believability.
Was there any particular moment during that sequence that you're most proud of? Maybe a small character thing, just something like, wow, I'm really proud how we pulled that off.
Ooh, I think just seeing the gondolas initially in the opening scene, it was just amazing, seeing it come to life.
And for you, it's great, because one of the things I love about Cameron, he lets time for scenes and characters to breathe, locations and breathe. But then you had to have the battle scene. What were the challenges after you have a wonderful setup going to the fight scene?
It's a great question. I mean, we had the entry of the gondola to the Medkaina village at the start, where we established the entire gondola itself. And then as the attack happens, that we see different parts of the gondola and different aspects. We get to see everything, so it's fantastic.
One of the challenges too with the battle is we see large parts of it getting burnt and destroyed during the battle, so it was also, we had to build a lot of it twice over to have the intact version and also the destroyed versions as well, and stages along it getting burnt as well, so it was a big job.
Okay, Avatar, you read the script, you love the script, but you got to make the movie. So after loving the script, what was your initial fears, worries, like for each of you, like how are we going to pull this off?
You go first. Oh, I don't know. Make Nick go first.
For me, reading the script, well, it was two things. It was reading the script, and it was also at the premiere for Avatar 2. I had a conversation with Richie, and this was just coming off the back of Way of Water, and he told me that 3 is at least 5 to 15 times bigger than what we just achieved. So that was a moment of interest and horror in equal measure. But the other incredibly challenging thing to try and translate from the page was the Flux Devil, which is an elemental plasma vortex. When we work with Jim, everything is deeply grounded in physics, and we try and source as much as possible, but a elemental vortex with gravity inverse, and then you've got a fire tornado and a water tornado, that was incredibly challenging.
Yeah, you had a lot of multiple worlds to take. For you, what was the most challenging world out of? Because you had the Wind Traders, you had the fire people, you had the industrial complex. For you, what was the most challenging and exciting?
I can't pick one. We give our all to everything, and sometimes the subtlest effects are what take the most love. But I did love getting to explore the new ashy worlds that we were able to get into.
The villain is fantastic. And that world, what was a scene or moment that you're really proud of with her?
Oh man, I think it's that first moment where basically they met. It was the kidnapping moment in the woods actually, and they were chasing the kids all the way up to the river basically, and it's just that moment, that intense moment where they're just chasing them through the jungle, and you're seeing all this interaction, you're seeing all this chaos and fire. Everything, and then you have this huge river sequence where all the kids are going down. I mean, it's just incredible. Actually, it gives that sense of like terror, and yeah, it came through.
How about for you? What was your favorite Varang scene?
My favorite Varang scene? Probably when they were all dancing around the campfire, and jumping through, and then you see all the embers and stuff flying up. I thought that was pretty cool. Spinning the, it's pretty,
It's interesting. So one of the things I love about Avatar, Cameron always starts with character first. And is that for you all of you, I mean, take this one, is it great for you, like, you start with character, then you can build a world around the character instead of sometimes they want to build the world first?
It's all about, with Jim, it's all about character and it's always about narrative, and everything in the shot is for a specific purpose, and you're never supposed to distract from that story. So while we might do an amazing explosion or something that we think looks amazing, if it distracts from the story, we need to take it out. So one thing that Jim really drilled into us was being a filmmaker. And if you're an artist, we're often, behind a computer and you don't feel like you're a filmmaker, but he really drilled that into everyone. So everything is narrative first, character first, and every single thing has a purpose.
All right, so Avatar, you read the script. I'm sure you all love the script, but then there has to be a moment when sinks in, we're going to have to actually make this movie. So for you, what was the initial, like, how are we going to pull this off? Was there any sequence or setting that was most challenging?
Wow. I mean, there's so many sequences. I think the river run for us was a huge one. I think because it was just such an integration between all the effects and the performances, and just with live action plates that were incredibly intricate. It was such a back and forth between all department, and really just kind of highlights all of the collaboration between everybody. So yeah, it's really fun to have those challenges and to try and overcome them.
I will also add that things start many years before, and the challenge of bringing Varang to the screen and living up to all of those established characters and making her such a badass, that began many years ago when we first met Oona. We were working on The Way of Water. John Landau thought it was a good idea for the actors to meet the animators, and we got to meet Oona, and we were so excited to get going with Oona, but it actually took many years before we could even start on the character, because she was obviously only in Fire and Ash. And as soon as we got going with her, we were just so excited. What a character to work on. So, she was a big challenge, and I think everyone at Weta did an amazing job with her.
What about the Wind Trader thing? Because that was, to me, you create a whole world, the Wind Traders, beautiful setting, the woman making a family, and then you get to a battle. For you, what was the challenge for that?
Okay, being a fishmonger, I worked mainly on Varang and Oona, right?
Oh, I know. We'll go back. We'll cut to Varang because we interviewed her. You got to give her a lot of space. She has to develop as a character. She's really a bit, and also one of the most amazing villains I've seen in a long time. For you, what was like developing the character to give her space to breathe before she got the darker scenes where she's battling?
Yeah. So for us, being a fishmonger, when I saw the design, we knew right away that she's going to be a badass character, right? And her performance is so wild and expressive. It was a really big challenge for us to how can we manage it so that we could capture her expression performance while try to match it with the Navi world, right? But I think with these amazing facial animators and texture artists with all the war paint, I think we did a pretty good job on it. Yeah.
Yeah, the war paint was critical because we had to make her believable and real. How was that process?
Well, we had a bunch of people on set putting a bunch of cold makeup on and then smearing across their face and doing the whole practical thing. And we captured this and translated it to the CG model. But it was the design that started it all. It's very, stark white, red, and black. It really kind of gives you this villainish kind of vibe. But
It's amazing to see everything come together, and I think you were bringing up the Wind Trader sequence, and I think that's what Jim does really well, is you've got this huge battle that's happening up there, and you've got, 50 Ikran in the background, you've got people running on this ship, but you have these moments where you punch in on this beautiful facial model that has this iconic face paint with this facial animation that's all brought together, and it's one of those things where it's just such a harmony of so many departments, and there's thousands of people working on these films, and it's just such a privilege to be a small part of that, and to see all of those individual disciplines come together into one, final image on screen, Yeah,
and a painstaking amount of detail goes into this. I mean, Steve mentioned it while we were up on stage, talking about every pixel is kind of inspired by Oona. That's exactly right. All of our animators are looking through every little detail, trying to trying to feel the emotion that we get from Oona and ask the question, are we feeling it on Varang? And sometimes that involves a tiny little eye dart, a tiny little extra squint in the, a little sticking of the unsticking of the lips, maybe a little ear move just to help sell a bit of kind of inner monologue or inner feeling. Every little detail from the neck, the throat, the breathing, the breath, it's all created by an artist that cares passionately about translating that performance onto Varang. And I'm just so proud of the whole team, everyone involved in Varang. Congratulations.
So we're gonna talk some sinners, and let's talk about the two biggest scenes. Obviously, when all the musicians come, and the fire and the juke joint. What was the process of trying to pull that off?
It was just a collaboration between every department. It took so much planning, weeks and weeks of planning. It's Autumn, our cinematographer, Ryan, all the actors, the music, the practical special effects of actually literally burning a roof down, as well as helping that and with visual effects, helping get the camera through the roof, which the camera couldn't do. It's just speaks to the entire film, like collaboration between departments was at the heart of everything we did.
Similarly, though, the vampire at the end burning was also a critical moment of the film. What were the challenges in that one?
It was, well, the fire tornado was something that really needed to be as genuine as possible, because the whole film is, the effects aren't supposed to take you out of the movie. And so for the death at the end where we had the fire tornado, we had to practically make that. It took us quite a few weeks to come up with the look and to get it perfected. And then these guys took it home. It's great.
Also a real collaboration with the special effects makeup department, very complex, staged, real prosthetics in front of the camera for the different stages of Remek's death. And Espen and his team created digital versions of these stages and expanded the whole environment behind them with complex water simulations to complete something seamless that really makes the moment impactful.
Now, for you, did you have any favorite scene you like? Maybe a smaller scene, scenes that maybe wouldn't be as noticed by, like, say, student filmmakers as visual effects? Did you have a special scene you really liked?
Yeah, I don't know about not noticed, because I think probably everybody realized there was visual effects involved, but the snake attack at the beginning of the movie on the truck bed was an interesting one, just because Ryan put a lot of thought into that in terms of making sure that it was really kind of a foreshadowing of what happened later at the juke joint with the standoff with cornbread. And I think there were some really subtle things like the eye effect on the snake, kind of mimicking the look of the vampire's eyes, and there was a lot of thought that went into all of those different processes, so that there's a real line through the whole movie that you can appreciate on second, third viewing even more.
Okay, so let's go back to there's a couple of worlds I'd like to talk about. The first thing, you have to create 1930s. Separating from the vampire, what was the biggest challenge trying to create the look of the 30s with visual effects?
Well, like so many of all of the visual effects in Sinners, in fact, they're rooted in photography and they're rooted in the design of our collaborators on the film, and in particular in that instance, Hannah Beechler, phenomenal production designer, and really we were honoring her designs, and if ever we needed to create anything, we would go to her and say, this is what we're thinking, how do you feel about it? And she would be very constructive in giving us lots and lots of notes for us to hit. So really we were helping support the other departments and would always defer to them really on the design in particular.
That was a key aspect of our visual effects work. I call it preservation of creative intent. Like everyone was cast by Ryan in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. And he wants everyone to bring their ideas and their creativity. So the moment that we're building things or rebuilding things that go into other departments' area or territory, we always rope them back in because we want to preserve their creative intent. And I think that's really important, especially when it comes to creating seamless visual effects work, because you want it to be technically seamless. And for us, that meant we had to create all the beautiful imperfections of 65mm IMAX film. But it also needs to be a seamlessness in front of the camera. And you can only achieve that if what you're building digitally is actually in line with what everyone else was doing on set. Hannah, production design, Ruth, wardrobe, and then especially Autumn Durald Akapo, our DP. Anything that we did, we ran by her to make sure it is in line with her framing, her lighting, and just overall her creative intent.
Now, the first kind of fantasy scene was a juke joint where the different era musicians come in and they had the fires. I argue if that scene doesn't work, the movie fails. Like that to me, that is really, because you're setting up so much. What were the challenges of doing that scene?
Well, I totally agree. From the first instance of reading that scene on the script, what popped into my head wasn't what we saw in the cinema at the end. It was hard to picture, you know, its ancestors and ghostly figures and things like that. But we started that whole process with a piece of music from Ludwig Göransson. We then worked with our visualization team and partners at Barraboon here in LA and in Spain, and we started to block everything out to understand where the ancestors would appear, to understand how the camera would move, to understand the spatial constraints of the set, to understand how the Steadicam could move around. And the Steadicam had to be modified to be lighter, to be able to be moved around the space with smaller magazines, which meant that they couldn't run for as long a take as they usually could. So we had to understand that and find cut points within the scene. So it was very collaborative.
How about for you? What was the challenge for that sequence for you?
For what we call the surreal montage, I mean, you know, we like to front load, which meant, as James just mentioned, an enormous amount of planning. There was a time when we were delivering a visualization iteration per day. And, you know, every day another one and another one and another one, because, you know, this was really about crafting what it needed to be, so that on the day when we were shooting all the little sections, because it's actually a 5-section oneer that we had to stitch together, we wanted it to be like a painting by numbers exercise. You know, at that point, we wanted to make sure that Ryan can focus solely on performance. We didn't want him to worry about where does the camera have to be and when, and, you know, does it work with music and all of that. At that point, we had to know what we're doing. So I think overall, we delivered more than 50 previous iterations over the course of 6 weeks. And, you know, I remember the day when we brought one of those previous iterations together with the music by the Göranssons. That was an incredible moment, like seeing it, how it was, you know, becoming alive in that particular moment was incredible. It was a total goosebumps moment.
You had to pull off the climax, the vampire burning scene, really the end of the film. What were the challenges with the burning up our vampires?
There's a lot of components at play in that movie. It's the death of our big bad, Remick, and there are contributing factors to his death. He gets smashed over the head with a guitar, he gets staked through the back, and the rising sun contributes to his flesh blistering and burning. So it was a collaboration between visual effects, practical effects, special effects makeup, and so it really started with a chart to say, you guys are taking care of this, and then visual effects find the places where we can provide the sinew, so to speak, to build everything together. But it was really being true to the stuff we were able to film, and then visual effects doing the things that we couldn't do with makeup.
It was really rewarding. You know, a lot of that hinges on prosthetic makeup. And those pieces were incredibly complex. And a lot of them we actually never shot in front of the movie camera. They were built so that we can scan them, because the intent was Ryan didn't want to cut away from, you know, the progressive demise of Remick. He wanted to show it in the frame. So we needed to make that happen digitally. And but at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't want to stray away from this preservation of creative intent principle. So essentially what we did is we applied digital makeup and then blended between the different stages. And the biggest compliment that we received eventually was that Mike Fontaine, the guy who put all of that together, called me and was like, I can't tell anymore what you did and what I did. The only reason why I know it wasn't me is because it's blistering and boiling and steaming and smoking, and, you know, so that was incredible. That was really great. And again, this goes hand in hand with like those themes that we said. One other really big thing that I should mention is we were trying to create timeless work, because that's a big thing to Ryan. He talked to us about that a lot. You know, a lot of the films from the early 2000s, in his eyes, you can still watch today. The visual effects work doesn't pull you out because it ages really well and it's timeless. That's what, you know, the goal was for what we were doing on Sinners. He wanted a film that he can still watch in 25 years and it will still look good. That's why we were falling back on a lot of those old school techniques, because they work. and it's amazing what you can achieve if you do this, you know, this delineated handshake where the lines are all getting blurred between, you know, who was doing what.
All right, so what was when you first set onto the project, what was the thing you would be most scared of trying to pull off visually, effects-wise?
I think it was like to put like the drive for wet for Monza. That was very like intense for us to turn like the whole environment into the wet and like to render the car and all of these.
How about for you?
Well, I think, you know, it's fun to talk about all the work now, but when we were in the middle of it, we really wanted audiences to not know we were there at all. So just trying to stay hidden, invisible, and support the story was really the challenge.
And how about, all right, so the big money scene, I would argue, is the actual crash. What were the challenges in creating that look?
Ooh, well, the biggest crash we had was in Vegas, and we had to LiDAR, you know, see like whole streets in Vegas for it. So actually getting in and physically LiDARing and then recreating a real crash for the film was the hardest bit of that crash.
And one thing I loved is you really did feel like you were in the car. You try to make it as much as natural as possible, so almost hiding the visual effects. What were the challenges, like getting Brad in the car, making it look natural for us, even though there's a lot of visual effects behind it?
It's a big question. How much time you got? So, it was all about working on a nice car and having the time and the references to make a nice car to help fix the shots of Brad, because like they were really doing that driving, they were going that fast, but it's things like removing cameras, adding other cars, and making it all integrate nicely at the end of the day was what it was all about.
It must have been really helpful having NASCAR behind it as a kind of someone to advise you how things should behave and look. What was the challenge of having that kind of support?
Well, I mean, the goal of the film was authenticity from day one, from our director, Joe, and so having the access to everyone at Formula One was just critical because we had the drivers to ask questions to. We also had our stunt team as well, but just any question we had and getting everything right from the tire color to what gear they should be on in any particular corner, all of that was really, really very detailed work, so it was very critical.
One thing like F1, about all your films, special effects sometimes can dominate the film. One of the tendencies I see with your films is you don't want it to dominate. You want to make it real as possible and support the film. When you approach F1, what did you want to make sure to keep the realism and not let the special effects overshadow it?
Well, it's got to be seamless. It's got to really enhance the story, make the story better, and it can't be something that you notice. And that's what the brilliance of what the visual effects artists do. It seems perfectly placed and perfectly real, and yet they created it on their computers, which is the magic.
How much did having NASCAR support, F1 support, help you kind of make it more realistic, this film, as compared to other films to having that kind of backing?
We couldn't do it without them. We went to 9 races, we were embedded, and we were the 11th team, and they made it so easy for us.
One of my favorite shots is just, you feel like you're in the car the whole time with Brad Pitt and the other guy. Was that something really important for you? We want to make sure the audience can actually feel it and not be taken out of the story.
Absolutely, that was the key. Make you feel like you're driving that car with Brad.
The opening sequence, really the jumping out of the plane and setting Seoul. What were the challenges of kind of establishing the look for the opening of the film, which is really sets the tone of the film?
That was telling the audience what kind of movie they were up for. We tried to say a little bit about each of the girls' personalities, tease some of the rules of the world, and how much there was going to be some spectacle. So we had to layer in as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, how bright and colorful and relatable this movie was going to be.
Was there anything particularly challenging, a look or a character that you found a little more challenging?
I think the character ranges of their faces was really the most challenging. They go from, like Josh said, sincere, but they go wacky and wild and eyes and mouths that defy, sort of logic. So I think that was one of our big challenges.
The movie hinges on Golden. Honestly, it's a real dramatic thing. For you, what were the challenges of doing that sequence, which was beautifully visually as well as singing?
I mean, it was definitely a challenge to create all of her outfits for Rumi specifically, but most of the girls, we had to create over 20 outfits for each of the girls. So I think that the amount of assets that had to go in and just recreate that sequence was just super challenging, but super fun as well.
Did you have a favorite character or outfit?
I spent so much time working on Rumi and so I'm very related to Rumi, but I also really like Zoe. She's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, she's super cool.
Yeah.
All right, we have a lot of students that watch our show. I'd be curious, like, what moment, is there more of a quieter moment you're really proud of visually that maybe people wouldn't notice as much, but something that, like, you'd want the students to look at, like, you know what, this is something we're proud of and something you can learn from?
I'll shout out a shot that Sophia did. So Sophia was the very first animator on the show and the last one on the show as well. And she did a really quiet moment of, like, after the finale when she has to compose herself after throwing her Hanmoon sword into Gima, like the recomposing herself. That was a nice quiet transition from like her traumatic experience to victory, her own path.
All right, so you read the finale. I'm sure you love it, and you've been looking to pay off in the world. But what was the thing that said, oh, wait, this is going to be a little difficult to challenge for us?
Well, everything needs to be just bigger for the season. You know, we need to take technology further. We want to draw the audience in more on the effects. And you've got this whole range of, you know, emotional characters, like bringing young Wilmac from season 1 to, you know, the Mind Flayer, you know, this massive sort of finale piece, and giving a really satisfying climactic conclusion to, you know, the kids' battle with Vecna and the Mind Flayer in the same battle. Vecna himself, you know, needed to be, you know, elevated from season 1. You know, he's a lot tougher, he's bigger, he's sort of, you know, he's more buff. But, you know, conversely, he's a lot more charred and broken. He's got all these negative space. You can see through him in places. So, real challenge keeping him menacing and threatening and a worthy opponent to our heroes.
We have a lot of students watching, so I'm always curious to ask, obviously the vacancy was amazing. Is there any scene you can point to in this finale or this season that you're most proud of that was a little more subtle than maybe like students look at, hey, this was a great scene for our effects, but it was a little more subtle and a quieter scene?
Quieter scenes, yeah. I mean, often, you know, one of the things that really hangs all VFX together, you've got the big sort of bombastic stuff, but, you know, I love it when the Demogorgon is sort of hunting down Karen and Holly and going through the bathroom and the kitchen, and there's a lot of really small effects, things you miss that we're putting in, like, you know, after the Demogorgon smashes the glass shower pane, there's a shot afterwards where you see his close up on his foot, and it's pressing into the carpet, and it's depressing the carpet, and when it comes up, there's a bit of glass that's stuck to his heel that drops off, and it's all these little things that help connect to the real world, the visual effects with the real world.
How was it on the final day after all this time?
Oh man, it's, I mean, I was on the show for sort of 2.5 years, so, you know, it was deeply sad actually. I loved working on the show. I have a wonderful team, wonderful show to work on, and yeah, I miss it.
Okay, so what did you enjoy most about this past season of Paradise?
It has been very exciting letting all the secrets that we've had, they finally are out and exposed now, so that's the best feeling.
Yeah, from that point of view, that you've been really setting so much stuff beautifully, your character and all the characters, how fun it was actually finally paying some of that off?
I think the fans are going to be the most satisfied when it's a very, I mean, there's so many storylines in this season when things, I don't even want to, I don't know when this is going to air, so I want to be careful. But it's a great season. Yeah.
All right, well then let's go back to the past season. I have a question for you when that has aired. Is there any particular scene that you're most proud of, and just like maybe even a subtle scene, more of a quieter scene from the first season?
From the first season, you know, I think it was, the most exciting was that first scene that you introduce Terry in, my character. It's a principal's office, and I thought when I auditioned that I was just going to be the wife of the president's security of detail. I had no clue that we were going to witness the end of the world. So as far as I was concerned, that was the only kind of Terry that you would see. So it was kind of thrilling to be able to expand on that more this year.
So was the hardest part of your job is keeping all the secrets to your family and friends?
That is the hardest part. That is no joke. The family and friends who have said to me, so just tell me what happens. And I'm like, do you think you're going to be the one that I'm going to tell everything to? That's been the toughest part.
So talk about the last one. So you first read the script. Wow, I love this. But then you realize I'm going to actually have to make it. What was the biggest challenge for this?
The weather, I think. Like the shooting conditions were far from ideal, so the amount of digital enhancement and weather systems that we had to make was quite a challenge, and really lent to the overall feel of the episode, I think, in the end.
Was there any particular scene that was most difficult or challenging?
Oh, just the crowd scenes in general. Like, there's so many additional people we added in CG. Like, we had about 30 practical stunt artists on set, and we extended the crowd to up to 500. So it was quite challenging to just add all those additional CG characters into the existing plates.
They weren't just crowd, you know. They were like hero modeled characters, you know, creature bait, everything, simulated cloth, hair, everything, even in the background. Like, it was a lot to render, a lot to handle, a lot to hand off, lots of stuff for you guys to comp with. Like, it was a big job.
And what about the zombies?
The infected.
How was it developing for this episode?
Well, yeah, there was just heaps of variants. We had to make sure that there's no repeating looks of animation and, well, clothing as well, and some of that was handled in comp. We made some templates to break up the different costumes and get variety, and yeah.
There's a very silhouette, dark, moody kind of, every frame was kind of like that, and we used the costumes from the characters to like bring some little color, hints of color through the frame as it went on. You know.
It must be kind of fun now. The zombies are in different stages. Yeah. Is that kind of what you get to actually kind of mess with them a little and change up because they have to look different? They're different ages, they're different styles.
Sure. Yeah, totally. There's distinct sections where they're clickers or they're more advanced bloaters and things like that. So the storytellers really wanted to emphasize that and variate that as well as much as possible. So yeah, there were distinct stages to show that storyline, and then we emphasized that with extra blood and gore and bile and gross stuff like that to just make it kind of scary and impactful and feel like you've got a horde of dangerous creatures coming at your door.
Weta, did you ever imagine it would become what it is today?
No, when we named it Weta, and my wife and I own and run Weta Workshop, which is the practical side of the company, not Weta Digital. I really couldn't have imagined this, right? The first award we won, which was a New Zealand award, I handed it to my wife and said, we need to treasure this moment. It won't get any better than this, right? That's how small-minded I was about it, and now it's just grown. So, yeah, we feel very fortunate to have gone on this journey.
I'm a bit of a Tolkien nerd, and Lord of the Rings kind of helped the company along. One of the amazing things about the original trilogy was how grounded and practical it was. It was visual effects, of course, but it was always practical first. How do you think that really helped the film when you focus first on practical and the visual was a supporting character?
Yeah, I obviously think it helps massively. Peter Jackson comes from a practical background, so he wanted to bring that to the movie. I call it building plausible ecologies. You're trying to create a plausible world that feels that real creatures, real people could live there. And practical effects certainly grounded and helped that in a big way.
Now, is it one film early in your career that you want people to look at saying, this is one of my early day ones, but I'm really proud of this film, that didn't get as much notice as Lord of the Rings?
Oh, Brain Dead is definitely the one I would recommend. Called Dead Alive in America, but if only America could see the uncut version of it. I'm very proud of that early work, so covered in blood for 6 months solid.
The Gorge. All right, so when you first read the script, I'm sure you loved it.
It was cool. Yeah, it was really interesting.
But you had to oh my God, we're going to have to make it. So what for you was your gut reaction, what is going to be the biggest challenge?
I think the complexity of the mutated environment and all the creatures was a really interesting, unique challenge to take on. Yeah, I think that was the complexity of how we had to create the body web and a lot of the other challenges we had to face with the creatures.
I mean, was there any scene that was particularly challenging for you?
Yeah, for the modern standard point of view, that's a really massive asset. So it's spread through the really vast industrial facility. But there's a lot of close-up shots, so we need to take care of the detail, but also taking a wide shot. So how to cut, how to split asset, that's really challenging stuff.
What I liked, especially early in the movie, is establishing the relationship from a distance, trying to make it realistic, having visual effects, but never letting it get away with the character. What was your process of making sure that the character relationship was developed, but the visual effects kind of helped that along?
I think there's a natural process of visual effects where we're always trying to support the story as well. So like we're really like paying attention like to the action of the supporting characters. The environment was really a character on like our work, and that, how that played with the actual live action that we had to integrate with.
The residents. What was the biggest challenge working on that? Your company working on that show?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge was recreating what we built on set. You know, we had a huge production that built the White House on 5 different stages, and our biggest challenge was re-envisioning what they built on stages into visual effects. And I think we did it very successfully, and you know, making sure that we stay true to the production designer's dreams. That's basically it.
Was there any scene in particular that was like, oh boy, this one's a tough one?
Lots of them, actually. Yeah, we had like a lot of complicated one-off shots, but the one that I think we're getting nominated for partially tonight is the dollhouse view of the White House, which is a unique view of all the interior rooms and the exterior at the same time, which is the front facade of the White House sliced off, and showing a bunch of unique story points that are all, combined together to show the audience exactly what's going on at any one moment in time across the entire White House.
You first read the screenplay. What was your gut reaction, and what were you like, oh my God, how are we going to pull this off?
We were super excited because we weren't supposed. I mean, we didn't know if we were being nominated, so it was like, wow, crazy when we know that. But we worked so hard for this, and we were really, really, really proud to be nominated for.
When you read the script, what was your gut reaction?
Oh, read the script. Honestly, I never read the script.
When we originally got the pitch of this station, we were, how are we going to be able to make that work on an episodic level? And that's where we started to work like hand-to-hand with VES Dev, like visual development, to get ideas roughly, to make sure that we can block out every pieces together. Then we had like technical director on the show that help us fix the technical aspect, but will make sure everything can work in the end. So a lot of like brainstorming with like the visual development department and the technical department.
Now for you, what about what was your most challenging scene?
I think there's like one shot where we go across all the station and we see a lot of details of every part of the station. And yeah, this was challenging for so many aspects. The cylinder form from the animated like part of the sequence and everything. But I mean, when I saw that, I already know those guys before. I know they have like big brain, a huge problem solver, so I always feel like it was going to be hard but fun.
He says that, but he was the one doing the LookDev of the station, so I was mostly on his back for the entire show.
Now, how does it feel that you're being honored today by your fellow visual effects artists?
Great. It's my first nomination. I think he's been here twice now, so I don't know, just happy to be with this team. Super honored, and yeah, hopefully we can bring it home for Frame Store and the team. Yeah,